Hi, so why does your drum sample sound weak and boring? In this video I'm going to give you some solid tips on how to take your weak samples and make them strong and powerful in the mix. My name is Matthias and let's take the tour! Okay, so I often get the questions on how to improve drum samples and make them hit harder and sound more modern and hyped in a mix. So yeah, there's actually some really basic tricks that you can use to improve your samples and make them hit harder. And one of the tricks is using saturation or moderate overdrive. So the albums that you are listening to on Spotify, they often have processed samples or very hyped processed samples. So that's the difference. You are using unprocessed samples and you want to either use processed samples or hype your own weak samples with overdrive and saturation. So here we have some LS's drum machine samples and they are unprocessed. So we have a kick here. And we have a snare and a second snare. So we will listen to a little beat pattern that I programmed here. First with unprocessed, and then I will activate some saturation plugins here. And keep a close look here at peak limiter. And here we have a spectrum analyzer and also an oscilloscope, so we can really look at the waveform. Okay, so as you can see there, you have some peaks going on when we're playing the unprocessed signal. You can see that the peak limiter is dragging down the amplitude. But as soon as we activate any of these saturators, we actually have a louder perceived signal, but you don't have these really high peaks. So I think the best way to explain this is actually to look at a simple sine wave, because with a sine wave you can see what actually happens to the waveform as soon as you start to saturate and apply overdrive. I have a phase plant preset here with a simple sine wave generated. And if we look at the master channel here and look at the peak limiter and these analyzers, you see that we have a strong fundamental there. And we have a soft, perfect sine wave. So a sine wave can never be above 0 dB, and that's this line up here. If we start to increase the volume of this patch, we can actually do that by adding this tool device in the beginning. You can see that the peak limiter will start to drag down the amplitude for this sound. So we just get a lower signal. So how can we make this sine wave sound louder without increasing the amplitude for that fundamental frequency? That's when you start to use overdrives or saturators. And we can look at first here with a Camel Crusher. Just apply some basic tube distortion, some tube overdrive. You can see that our perfect sine wave is turning more like a square wave, not completely a square wave, because it has this really soft top. And that's because it's doing soft clipping. And that's generally what you want to do with your drums. You want to apply some soft clipping and not this hard clipping, which you can also do if you try this mech parameter. Because that's just destroying your drum sounds. Sometimes it can be useful, but probably most often you are going to use soft clippers. So by overdriving the signal like that, you can see that we also get more frequency, more high-end frequency in this upper range. So as soon as you add some tube distortion, you can see that we get these upper harmonics. And that's very good because human hearing is very sensitive to 2 kHz to 5 kHz range. So if you want your sounds to be perceived louder, you really need to have frequency content in that area of the frequency spectrum. So that's basically what we're doing here with the saturation or the overdrive. Let's go back here to the drum group and listen to the drum groove again. Now I can actually turn off the tool device here, so we can have loud drums again. So we can actually see here on the kicks also how they are affected by the overdrive. This is the basic kick without any processing. You can see that we have, yeah, this sine wave almost going on. And then we add this Camel Crusher with some tube distortion. You can see that we get this soft clipped top, which gives us more mid-range and upper harmonics, so we get a louder sound there. Yeah, so the Camel Crusher is a free saturation plugin, and I actually like the sound from this one, but I really think that M Saturator gives a more precise and nice sound. And with the M Saturator, you actually have the ability to adjust the harmonics. So let's listen to the Head Crusher, which is also a free plugin. I really like this overdrive too, because it sounds like a guitar pedal almost. It's quite nice. And here the drive is almost set to the lowest point, but we still get some overdrive going on. Here's another overdrive. But yeah, I don't really like the sound of the temper, but it can probably work on basses. But on drums, I think it's not a very good choice. Then we have the Fuzz Plus, also a free plugin. Then we have the Factorator, which is a plugin from Kilohertz, which has some really cool modes here. So you can really go wild with that one. Then the Saturator, which is also a Kilohertz plugin. This has also a very nice overdrive, where you can also control the spread if you want to spread out your snare. This is actually spreading out the kick and the whole drum kit now, because it's applied to the master channel. But I would probably apply this distortion only to the snare. Then we have the Isotope, which is also a very nice saturator or overdrive plugin. I use this on everything from basses to drum samples. It's very easy to use, and you can use it as a multi-band effect, so you can have a certain overdrive in the lows and another overdrive in the mids and a third overdrive in this upper range. Then the Effect Grid. This is actually very nice because it's a native plugin within Bitwig. It's coming in Bitwig 3. It's probably going to be released at the end of July, before the August vacation, I think. So we can listen to without the Effect Grid first. Then I did some setup here with a multi-effect. And yeah, I have just a tiny bit of overdrive in the lower range. This is splitting up the lower bands and the higher bands. So in the lower bands below 200 Hertz, I'm having this subtle distortion. And then on the upper range, I have yeah, pretty much more overdrive. Yeah, so I highly recommend some of these free plugins if you want to apply some soft distortions to your drums and percussion. And first the M Saturator, which has a really nice and wide and broad sound, and you can also adjust the harmonics. Then we have the Head Crusher, which has a bit warmer sound, more like a guitar pedal maybe. And then finally the old good and old Camel Crusher, which is also a free plugin. But if you have a Bitwig, of course, you can download Bitwig 3 Beta and just apply this distortion effect in the effect grid and get some really nice distortion. Yeah, so I hope you liked this video about distortion and saturating your drums. If you have any questions on the content of this video or hyping your drums, please shoot them in the comment section below. Yeah, so if you want to get your hands on some really good samples, you can check out my sample packs at morningjoemedia.com/audio-shop. You can also support these videos by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Gelheim. Thanks for watching today and see you in the next video. Bye!
Har du banan?
Hej! Kolla, han kliar magen, han säger